Number 10. Alcatraz of the Rockies. One of the most secure prison facilities in the entire world is the Administrative Maximum Federal Correction Complex in Florence, Colorado. This place is known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, and it has been the home of some of the most infamous inmates ever. One of the most recent being Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who was convicted on drug trafficking charges and sent to the inescapable jail. This facility is located inside a very mountainous region of Colorado and is referred to as a Supermax facility. Other famous inmates include the Boston Marathon bomber, the Unabomber, and a conspirator involved in the Oklahoma City bombings. Basically, anyone who commits acts of terrorism or kills people. The ADX Florence, as it's commonly called, opened back in 1994. It currently houses over 400 of the FBI's most violent inmates. It also houses inmates who are likely to escape. This is because there is no escaping from the ADX. Inmates like El Chapo get stuck in solitary confinement for about 23 hours a day and kept under camera surveillance. Since they've opened, not a single person has escaped. Inmates living inside the ADX Supermax prison have almost no human contact. They're only allowed outside for between 1 and 2 hours a day, they're not allowed to have contact with other inmates, and everywhere is reinforced with concrete and under constant surveillance. Plus, the prison is basically built into the mountains like a fortress. Even if you escaped, there would be nowhere to run. Number 8. The Vatican's Secret Archives. The Vatican's Secret Archives has been one of the most secure buildings in the world ever since it was separated from the Vatican Library back in the 17th century. It has recently changed its name to the Vatican Apostolic Archives to try and remove some of the mystery surrounding it, as those in charge insist there's nothing secret about these archives. But, of course, if you have a giant archive that nobody is allowed inside of, underneath Vatican City, it's always going to be suspicious. Scholars have had limited access to the records from the beginning. The archives are filled with state papers, transcriptions from ancient trials, including those of the Knights Templar, and other important documents and artifacts acquired by the Church over the centuries. In order to guard the secrets of the archives, Vatican City even has its own special military known as the Swiss Guard, who protect everything inside the Vatican at all costs. For a few hundred years, not a single person was allowed to see the documents stowed away inside the archives. However, that did eventually change in 1881, when Pope Leo XIII allowed very limited access to historians. Then, in 2002, Pope John Paul II allowed researchers to access a handful of documents relating to the Vatican's relationship with Germany. Basically, access has only been granted to the secret archives when in the best interest of the Church. No one is simply allowed to wander around in the archives. Number 8. Fort Knox. When you think of secure buildings, you probably think about Fort Knox. Fort Knox is located in Kentucky and has been the gold standard for security around the world since it first opened as a gold vault back in the 1930s. The vault was named after Henry Knox, the first United States Secretary of War, and surprisingly, it only took a year to build. It also only cost about $560,000 at the time, according to the United States Treasury. And contrary to popular belief, it only holds about half of the gold in the United States. Fort Knox is one of 6 facilities in the country protecting precious metals. In the beginning, gold bars were transported to Kentucky aboard trains with help from the United States Postal Service. That has changed dramatically throughout the years. In fact, it's not even clear how gold gets to and from the facility, as that would be pretty silly information to give to the public. What we do know is that Fort Knox's walls contain at least 16,000 cubic feet and 750 tons of reinforced steel. There are also 670 tons of structural steel and an underground complex of impenetrable layers and advanced technological security. The vaults are built of steel plates encased in concrete, and the vault door itself weighs at least 20 tons and is fully blast-proof. Basically, Fort Knox is a literal fortress. For decades, visitors were not even allowed inside Fort Knox. In 1974, one delegation from Congress was allowed inside the facility, and the New York Times wrote that there were 36,236 gold bars stacked from the floor to the ceiling, with nearly $2 billion worth of gold inside a single room. Nobody was allowed back in the facility until 2017. Number 7. Bold Lane Car Park. The Bold Lane Park-Safe Car Park in England is known as the safest parking lot in the entire world. No other parking lot has the kind of stringent security measures as Bold Lane. According to the BBC, Bold Lane has enough space for 440 cars and has never seen a case of theft or vandalism in all its years of operation. What's truly fascinating about Bold Lane is that its designer began engineering the project after his car window was smashed and his car stereo was stolen in the parking lot of an airport. Angry, a man named Ken Wigley designed the best parking lot ever. It has sophisticated security cameras that watch every inch of the facility. There are panic buttons. Entry doors use barcode tickets to keep safety parameters up. And there are special sensors that will go off if a parked car moves before it's supposed to. If one of the cars is tampered with or moved, a full lockdown will ensue, shutting down the entire facility. It seems a little excessive if you ask me. They're just cars, but I suppose if you have a very fancy vehicle, you'd want to store it here. Number 6. Iron Mountain. Iron Mountain is exactly as secure as it sounds. It's an underground vault built into the side of a mountain that stretches 220 feet below ground. The entire complex is naturally protected by the mountain, and it was built inside of an old limestone mine. Iron Mountain is used as an underground repository for records and valuable information, and it encompasses an area of 1.8 million square feet. Iron Mountain was designed to protect the most important information in the United States, from humidity, extreme temperatures, and natural disasters. There is 24/7 monitoring here, armed guards every second of the day, and cutting-edge technology trusted by the highest levels of government. But it doesn't stop just at security. The Iron Mountain complex has a constant temperature optimal for storing valuable data on disks, tapes, and hard drives. Even more, records are able to be shipped in and out of Iron Mountain for instant access. The records stored here are able to be converted into digital information and sent to the owner. And there are estimated to be about 2,300 companies worldwide keeping their records stored inside of Iron Mountain. There is one entrance protected by a steel gate that weighs 3 tons. The facility is fireproof, it's protected against flooding and lightning strikes, and the only way in is with a verified identification that must be cleared by security personnel in advance. If you have secret information, this is the place to store it. Number 5. The Doomsday Seed Vault. One of the most fortified places in the world is a facility located deep in the heart of an icy mountain far above the Arctic Circle, somewhere between mainland Norway and the North Pole. But this secretive facility is not used for keeping prisoners or gold, it's for the future of humankind. This is the Doomsday Seed Vault, and it holds more than 930,000 varieties of different crops, representing 13,000 years of agricultural history. This is a giant safety deposit box full of seeds, holding an almost complete collection of the agricultural biodiversity of the human race. It's known as the Global Seed Vault, and it's located on the Svalbard archipelago in Norway. As you can probably imagine, this is not the kind of place you're going to stumble upon on your next road trip. It's in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and is the farthest place to the north that you can fly using a commercial airline. Nobody goes to this place, which makes it pretty secure already, but the vault itself is also very difficult to enter. The vault has only one opening, the majority of the seeds are kept inside of a concrete layer deep inside of the mountain, and the only vault currently in use is so cold that its door is often covered in a thick layer of ice. If you really wanted to get into this vault, it would probably be easier than breaking into Fort Knox. But after you stole a bag of seeds, which have literally no monetary value, you would be stuck fleeing across the high Arctic, where you'd probably be eaten by a polar bear. Number 4, the DMZ. One of the most militarized places in the entire world is the border that separates the two Koreas. The DMZ, or Demilitarized Zone, is a buffer that stretches from coast to coast across the entire Korean peninsula. 155 miles long, or 250 kilometers, and just over 1 mile wide, 1.6 kilometers. Each side is separated by razor wire, traps that can blow up a tank, and some seriously heavy weaponry pointed at the opposite side. But what a lot of people don't know about the DMZ between the Koreas is that it was a major frontier in the Cold War fought between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Demilitarized Zone was the end of the war when an armistice was signed on July of 1953. Nobody ever actually won the war. The United Nations forces, led by the United States to take down the communist forces in China and North Korea, ended not with peace or with a treaty, but with what was essentially a ceasefire, which is still going on today. You might be able to sneak across the land border from Mexico into the United States, or the other way around, but good luck moving from one Korea to another. Every single inch of the DMZ is being watched by 160 guard posts on the northern side and 60 guard posts on the southern side. Plus, the DMZ is littered with up to 970,000 landmines. You'd be blown up by underground explosives or shot by nervous, twitchy guards. Would you ever visit North Korea? It's so different from life in the West, but it's a bit dangerous if you aren't extremely careful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already for more intense videos. Number 3, the zombie-proof house. There is a zombie-proof house in Poland, the likes of which you have never seen. When it comes to impenetrable fortresses, the safe house in Warsaw is the best there is. It was designed as a luxury mansion that could withstand even the worst zombie invasion. From the outside, the house looks like some kind of closed factory. When closed, it's nothing more than a slate gray box with no doors or windows, surrounded by a couple of trees. However, the house does open up and looks like a completely normal mansion. It's just that with a single push of a button, every window and entrance closes behind impenetrable concrete doors on hinges. The entire house can be sealed at a moment's notice, so tightly that not a single zombie could ever get inside. Plus, the zombie-proof house is surrounded by a zombie-proof outer shell. There's even a retractable drawbridge for extra safety to move in and out of the home. The lockdown system is operated by electronic engines that can be activated from anywhere inside the house. If you're worried about a zombie apocalypse, this is the ultimate mansion for you. Number 2, Hollywood Hills Fortress. Speaking of ultimate mansions, there's a fortress located in the Hollywood Hills that recently went up on sale for $4 million. What makes this fortress so valuable? Well, it's been designed as one of the safest homes in the world. The mansion sits on top of a grassy knoll. It's 7,744 square feet, or 720 square meters. It's earthquake-proof. It has a wine cellar that doubles as a security bunker. The security system is able to unleash disorienting fog spray through the house to cripple home intruders. The windows are bulletproof. There's a helipad on the roof for a quick getaway, and the walls are reinforced steel. Not even a grenade could blow apart the exterior walls of this mansion. Plus, the mansion is gorgeous. It's located in one of the richest neighborhoods in the United States and offers spectacular views. It also doesn't use keys. The mansion uses biometric recognition software, keeping out those pesky lockpickers. According to what the designer of the house told Forbes magazine, it was designed so that 3 generations can survive an apocalypse inside of the house and become the new Adam and Eve. Of course, that's assuming it's stocked with 100 years worth of food. Number 1, the Bank of England Gold Vault. The secret vaults beneath the Bank of England hold roughly $248 billion worth of gold, according to a recent report from The Independent. That's about 1/5 of the entire gold stockpile in the world, and it's hidden right underneath the streets of London. Britain may not own as much gold as some other countries, but they definitely guard the bulk of the global stockpile. And seeing as they have so much gold to keep an eye on, the security measures are absolutely insane. Gold bars are kept on numbered shelves inside a concrete safe deep under the ground. This underground safe was originally built in the 1930s and is still accessed using a small collection of keys that are 3 feet or 1 meter long. The security experts in charge of keeping the gold safe believe that using these big, complex keys is actually safer than relying solely on electronic access. But wait, because that doesn't mean there are no electronic safeguards. The only way into the vault is by speaking a password into a microphone that matches the visitor's voice with saved samples in the computer. And these are just a few of the precautions that we know of. When you're guarding hundreds of billions of dollars worth of gold, you can't just tell the world everything about your security measures. If you could sneak into just one of these places, which would you choose? Number 10. Thomas Busby's chair. Perhaps the strangest abandoned object that people don't know enough about is nothing more than a chair, which in the 1600s happened to be the preferred chair of a thug, thief, and drunk named Thomas Busby, who lived in North Yorkshire. That doesn't make it super impressive, as many chairs have been owned by some unsavory characters. But there's a little more to the story here. The chair was set up in his favorite inn, and he absolutely hated anyone else sitting in it. Well, Busby ended up killing his wife's father in a fit of rage, bludgeoning the man to death with a hammer. He was found out for his crime and sentenced to death in 1702. He was made to hang from a gibbet with his body dipped in tar. Then his body to be placed on display outside of his favorite inn, which soon after his death was renamed the Busby Stoop Inn until it closed in 2012. But here's where the abandoned object comes in. One version of the story says that Busby's last order of business was to curse the chair before he died, claiming that anyone who sat in his favorite chair would meet a swift death. Apparently, people took the threat very seriously. There was even a report in 1894 about a guy who sat in the chair and then was found the next morning hung from outside from a post. To keep people safe, the chair was eventually abandoned and hung from the ceiling so nobody could sit in it. To this day, the chair is still hung from a ceiling to keep others safe, though it's now sitting in a small museum in the town of Thirsk. I wouldn't sit in a chair with a curse on it. Would you? Number 9. Abandoned Foxtrot Navy Submarine. This abandoned Foxtrot Soviet submarine was apparently delivered to the Libyan Navy from the USSR sometime between 1976 and 1983. It was one of 6 submarines given to the Libyan Navy, and perhaps one of the only remaining vehicles. 4 out of the 6 of these submarines were decommissioned by the end of the 1900s and cannibalized to keep the remaining 2 submarines working for as long as possible. This abandoned sub, which is apparently sitting in a rural part of Russia, was likely ripped apart to fix other submarines. There isn't much more information about it, other than the fact that it's definitely not functional. It has been abandoned for a very long time, and it doesn't appear as though anyone will be coming to its rescue anytime soon. These submarines have been obsolete for some time, and like a lot of the old Soviet war machines, it's been forgotten and left to decay. Someone could probably steal this submarine and refurbish it if they had the right equipment, and get back underwater with it. But the government would probably not be too happy about that. Number 8. The Castell No Pools. The Castell No Pools are abandoned objects located near Barcelona. These pools were apparently used by people in the 1980s to cool off during the summer season. People would bus in from all over the country just to play in these giant, refreshing pools. There was also mini golf, a cafeteria, and some very large trampolines nearby for the locals' amusement. However, one year, rumors began to spread that the pools were not safe and were even deadly. Also, it was rumored that several children had died from jumping on the trampolines. The rumors ended up scaring all the locals, and people stopped showing up to the pools. They were eventually abandoned and neglected, and today they are a ghostly shell of their past glory, mostly adored by filmmakers and ghost hunters. However, it's never been confirmed that there is any supernatural activity involved in these weird pools. It's highly likely that they're just very creepy looking, and so some people think there are ghosts hanging around. The ruins can still be seen today of these once glorious pools. Now decrepit and certainly not a safe place to go swimming. These would have been a cool place to shoot a music video though. Have you ever gone to an abandoned pool? What did you find there? Why did you go? Tell me about it in the comment section down below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already. There are more awesome videos just like this one coming out all the time. Number 7. The Belcourt Castle Chairs. Rhode Island is one of the oldest settlements in the United States, established back in 1690. It's also home to the Belcourt Castle, one of the most incredible abandoned buildings in the country. The castle was constructed by an architect named Richard Morris, who had designed the castle for a bachelor in 1894. However, the bachelor only resided in the extensive home for about 8 weeks out of the year. Then, when he died in 1908, the castle fell into disrepair. The castle sat abandoned until the 1940s, when it was sold to an entrepreneur who wanted to turn it into a car museum. Of course, that never happened. The property was then used to hold jazz festivals, but the upkeep of the property was neglected. In 1956, the property was acquired by the Tenney family, who filled it full of strange antiques and then basically left it as a living museum. Many of these antiques proved to be haunted. This includes a set of 17th century samurai armor, a mirror from the 18th century that hangs inside of the music room, and a pair of old salt chairs that might be the creepiest abandoned objects in history. These chairs are located in the Gothic ballroom, and those who have visited the empty castle have claimed that the chairs are haunted by spirits, with one occasion having 70 visitors witnessing a bolt of lightning shoot from one of the chairs. Number 6. Rare Chinese Vase. A rare Chinese vase was abandoned in a French attic sometime in the 1900s. The Chinese vase sat in the attic collecting dust for at least 3 generations. The man who discovered the vase in the attic of his family home believes that it probably was purchased by his great-uncle a very long time ago, perhaps in the beginning of the 1900s. A little curious about how much the vase could be worth, the guy took it to be examined by professionals, where he learned that it could be worth upwards of $850,000. The vase is the only one of its kind, according to Sotheby's Paris, the same company that put the vase up for sale at auction. It was probably produced in China during the reign of the Qianlong Emperor between 1735 and 1796. The only other pieces of pottery like this are currently sitting in a collection at the National Palace Museum in Taipei, which shows you just how rare the vase is. This also goes to show that you should always be curious about what's sitting inside your attic, as you never know if you have a $1 million artifact that's been abandoned by an old member of the family. There are a lot of stories about abandoned antiques in attics that turn out to be worth millions. Keep your eyes open and you might be lucky enough to find one of your own. Number 5. Mummified Baby. Now, here is something extraordinarily strange and scary. A mummified baby was apparently found abandoned inside a house attic that belonged to the great-uncle of a man named Charles Peavy, and it has caused a huge controversy. But to understand this bizarre abandoned object, we need to go back to the beginning. According to the report from Seacoast Online, Charles Peavy's uncle had loved a Hawaiian woman about 80 or 90 years ago, and she had carried his child. But unfortunately, the child died at birth and was stillborn. For whatever reason, Charles Peavy's great-uncle kept the corpse of the baby and mummified it, then stuffed it into his attic and forgot about it. The other really crazy part is that Charles Peavy has a collection of family memorabilia that goes back 2 centuries, and the mummified baby is just considered to be part of the collection, added to it when they found it preserved inside his great-uncle's attic in Manchester. But here's where the controversy comes in. Charles Peavy's 4-year-old niece was overheard talking about the mummified baby with another kid at school, saying that her uncle was a murderer and he kept a dead baby in the house. Police got involved, the mummy was actually confiscated, and forensic anthropologists examined the mummy and refused to give it back. After all, it was literally a dead baby. Number 4. Witches and cat bones. Some very creepy objects were recently discovered by archaeologists inside of a 17th century cottage during a construction project in Lancashire. The cottage was found near Lower Black Moss Reservoir out in the rural countryside. Archaeologists had been brought in to survey the area before engineers could get to work with the construction project, and they found the remains of a strange building hidden underneath a grass mound. According to the recent report from BBC News, historians are now claiming that the cottage may have belonged to one of the infamous Pendle witches. Inside the bizarre cottage, archaeologists found a sealed room complete with cat bones bricked inside of the wall, which were likely used by witches to protect the cottage and those within it from evil spirits. However, there were no human remains discovered and no clue as to why the structure was abandoned and covered up with earth. I personally would never go in a building like this. It's too risky and too likely to be haunted. Number 3. Giant Monopoly. A man in California discovered something incredible when he decided to rip up the carpet in his house. What he found was a giant game of Monopoly that had been abandoned by the previous owners of the house and hidden beneath a boring carpet. The man from California moved into the bungalow house back in 2003, but it wasn't until just recently that he decided to renovate the house. What he discovered underneath the carpet was not only a massive game of Monopoly, but it was an adult Monopoly game, with silhouettes of naked women instead of the typical community chest. After discovering the strange Monopoly board, the man was actually able to get into contact with the previous owners of the house. However, they would not reveal the mystery behind their adult board game, which, for some strange reason, they decided to paint onto the floor of one of the bedrooms. And while the new owner of the game wanted to create life-size pieces to go with it, his wife at the time wouldn't let him. She forced him to paint over the Monopoly board on the floor. Shortly after, they got divorced. Unearthing that Monopoly game might have been bad luck for him. Number 2. Craig E. Clare Castle. The Craig E. Clare Castle in New York is one of the strangest abandoned buildings in the United States. It's located in the Catskills Mountains and is surrounded by so much mystery and intrigue that it just had to be put on the list. It's also known as the Dundas Castle, and nobody seems to be certain of its history. Nobody knows exactly when construction began on the original project, though educated estimates say that it began as a summer lodge for a man named Bradford Lee Gilbert in the 1880s. But when Gilbert passed away in 1911, that was when the castle really began to take shape. But here's where the story of this abandoned building gets really weird. After Gilbert died, Ralph Dundas took over the property for himself, but he died just 10 years later. And the year after his death, his wife was committed to a sanitarium. The castle ended up being abandoned. At some point in time, the property was purchased by the Masons, but even today, the place is decrepit and empty. Some say that on the full moon, the 3 heart-shaped ponds on the property even fill with blood. But of course, this has never scientifically been proven. Number 1. Abandoned heads. In the state of Virginia, there are 42 very creepy and abandoned heads of presidents that were apparently made by an artist from Houston who was inspired after he drove past Mount Rushmore. According to Insider Magazine, the statues were displayed for about 6 years in the President's Park in Williamsburg, but nobody really wanted to look at a bunch of creepy stone statues of presidents. So they were eventually transported to Croker, where they were supposed to be put inside of a stone crusher and destroyed. But rather than that happening, the guy hired to destroy them actually spent over $10,000 bringing them to his own property so that they could be saved. What's really crazy is that the presidential heads are now more popular because they're sitting in what appears to be an abandoned field on this guy's property than they ever were when they were at President's Park. And of course, this is because people just love abandoned stuff. Number 10. The Megabat. The giant golden-crowned flying fox is the largest bat on Earth, with a monstrous wingspan of up to 5.5 feet or 1.8 meters. These creatures are known as megabats, and they are literally terrifying. This bat is the size of a small child, and they can be seen at night soaring through the air in the jungles of the Philippines. Even more freaky is that these huge bats generally hang out in colonies of up to 10,000. Picture 10,000 children in vampire costumes streaking through the sky at night. It's enough to make you run for shelter and cry for your mother. Luckily, megabats are completely harmless to humans. They don't feed on babies, they don't suck your blood, and they actually only feed on figs and fruit. These bats are herbivores. They also aren't very heavy, with a weight of only around 2.6 pounds or 1.1 kilograms, despite their large stature. Also, megabats don't use echolocation to get around like other bats do. They have excellent sight and smell, and can navigate through the night sky remarkably well. But with a name like a megabat, you'd think they were a lot more dangerous, wouldn't you? They sound like evil carnivorous creatures in a horror movie. If they ever developed a taste for humans, that would be the end of local residents and their habitat for sure. Number 9. Giant George. From 2010 to 2012, a dog of gigantic proportions held the Guinness Book of World Records title of tallest dog. This was Giant George, a dog of such biblical size that he made appearances on popular shows like Animal Planet and The Oprah Winfrey Show. Unfortunately, George passed away back in 2013 at the young age of only 8. But he is still a legend today for being such a huge and surprisingly gentle giant. He was 43 inches, or 1.1 meters tall at the shoulders, with an impressive weight of 245 pounds. From nose to tail, George was 7 foot 3 inches. He lived in Tucson, Arizona with his family and was a humongous Great Dane. George had a pretty good life as well. He slept at home in a queen-sized bed, he liked driving around in the family's golf cart, and he was even given a full row of 3 airline seats when he flew to Chicago to appear on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Sadly, large breed dogs like George live short lives, probably because their hearts have to work extra hard to keep pumping blood throughout their massive bodies. George was treated like a rock star, and his presence in the world will be missed. Do you own a dog? What breed is it? How big is it? What's their name? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already. If you like this video, then you'll love what's coming out next. Number 8. The Congo Snake. The Congo snake is often considered to be the biggest, most mysterious, and strangest snake to have ever been photographed. The alleged encounter with this giant snake came in 1959, when a World War II pilot was returning to their base from a mission. While flying, the pilot witnessed an enormous beast of a serpent that some estimates have placed at being around 50 feet or 15 meters in length. That would make it larger than any living anaconda, and even big enough to rival the extinct Titanoboa. The man who physically witnessed the snake was Colonel Remy van Lierde, a Belgian pilot in World War II. He actually became one of the first Belgians to ever break the sound barrier back in 1958. He was considered a hero and a completely honest man, which makes his account of the snake that much more believable. Also, he saw the snake slithering through an extremely remote and largely unexplored part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He even turned his helicopter around and made a few extra passes at lower altitude just to see the snake again and get a good photograph of it. In his mind, there was no doubt that this was the biggest snake on Earth. Unfortunately, because the picture is so old and fuzzy, and because another similar snake has never been found, there's no way to confirm or deny the existence of a gigantic monster snake living in the Congo. I want to believe it exists, though. Number 7. The Giant Gippsland Earthworm. The giant Gippsland earthworm is the biggest, longest, and ugliest earthworm you will ever encounter. Almost nothing is known about the physiology of this worm, other than it can grow up to a shocking 9 feet or 2.8 meters in length. This is the typical kind of earthworm that you would find in your garden, only extra long. The worm is so big that when it was first discovered in Australia back in the late 1870s, farmers originally thought it was a type of snake. It wasn't until samples were sent to the University of Melbourne that they were discovered to actually just be giant worms. Unfortunately, one of the reasons almost nothing is known about these huge worms is that farmers have basically destroyed their population by farming much of the land where they live. It's actually made these worms into a protected species, and so they're very difficult to study. But according to Australian Geographic, the worms definitely live deep underground, they love wet soil, and they build an underground network of clay tunnels that can go on for hundreds of feet. And yes, they are incredibly slimy and super gross. But if you found one of these, it could feed a whole flock of chickens or a whole school of fish. Number 6. The Alien Squid. When people think giant squid, they think of the legendary kraken of mythology and sailors' tales. Giant squids are real though, and are recognized as being some of the biggest monsters living in the ocean. But there is a far stranger cephalopod floating on the coast of Australia that rivals the giant squid both in size and in creepiness. It's known as the big fin squid, but it looks more like an alien squid from an alternate dimension. In the past 30 years, there have only been about a dozen sightings of the big fin squid anywhere on Earth. These creatures are very rare, and they live thousands of feet beneath the surface of the ocean. It actually wasn't until just recently that researchers managed to catch one on video off the coast of Australia. Almost nothing is known about the big fin squid, other than it appears to be about 6 feet long, it has tentacles roughly 11 times longer than its body, and it is a strange, translucent color that makes it look kind of ghostly as it swims through the water. According to Popular Science, these squid could be living in the deepest and most unexplored parts of our ocean, which is why we barely ever see them. Number 5. The coconut crab. The coconut crab is one of the largest, strongest, and meanest crustaceans on Earth. Like the other giants from today, not everything is known about this huge terrestrial invertebrate. Charles Darwin was actually the first to describe the coconut crab as growing to a monstrous size. But what else is there to know about these giant critters? Well, as the name suggests, coconut crabs primarily eat coconuts. That in itself is not so scary. They have custom-built claws that will allow them to produce around 1,500 newtons of force, which is more force exhibited than any other claw-carrying member of the animal kingdom, according to National Geographic. The coconut crab is so strong that it can crush a coconut with its claw and slurp out the juices. But guess what? Coconut crabs are also mean. They have been caught eating other species of crabs, catching birds out of trees and scarfing them down, and even hunting rats. And while there is a pretty slim chance of getting into a fight with a coconut crab, be sure to protect your shins if you ever do. One quick snap of the coconut crab's claw could literally shatter your ankle. Number 4. The Himalayan Yeti. Some people believe that the Himalayan Yeti is a real animal. And if this does turn out to be true, it would make the Yeti one of the biggest creatures on Earth. The Yeti is generally believed to be an enormous ape-like creature with big feet, big teeth, and a big coat of white fur. It supposedly lives in the snowy regions of the Himalayas, and mostly keeps to itself. But just how real is this animal? Is the Yeti a giant, or just a giant urban legend? Here's the deal. The truth that almost nobody talks about is that the Yeti is actually part of the indigenous legends and histories of the Sherpa communities who live at altitudes of up to 12,000 feet in eastern Nepal. For hundreds of years, the Yeti has existed to local Nepalese culture as an obvious mythical figure, not a real animal. But in 1921, when Charles Howard Bury went on an expedition to Mount Everest and spotted an enormous footprint, the local legend turned into a global sensation. Ever since then, there have been dozens and dozens of supposed sightings of the Yeti, but no evidence to back any of them up. Even with footprints, bone fragments, and hair samples being touted as proof, they've always been disproven. Number 3. Cantor's giant soft-shell turtle. The Cantor's giant soft-shell turtle is not the largest turtle in the world, but it is still a giant in its own right. This turtle lives all throughout southern India and Southeast Asia, and it lives primarily in muddy rivers. The turtle is amazing for its crazy size, and the fact that it kind of looks like a squashed pancake. The Canters giant soft-shell turtle spends about 95% of its life buried under the mud, not moving a single muscle. The turtle just sits there in the muck its entire life, waiting for crustaceans or mollusks to get close enough to eat. But as for the size of the turtle, it has been highly debated. Some accounts have placed the turtle at being up to almost 6 feet, while ordinary reports claim that it's actually less than 4 feet. Still, for a squashed pancake that spends its life under the mud, the Cantor soft shell is one giant animal. Number 2, the Ocean Sunfish. The Ocean Sunfish is the heaviest, bony fish in the entire world. This thing looks like a giant dinner plate with a fin on its top and a fin on its bottom. These fish have been caught weighing up to 5,100 pounds, and the distance between the top and bottom fins can be up to 14 feet. This is not the kind of fish you're going to reel in during your next river fishing trip. These beasts live deep underwater in the ocean, feeding primarily on jellyfishes. This may sound strange considering jellyfishes are basically just water and almost no nutrients, but they are nonetheless the staple food of the giant ocean sunfish. One of the most fascinating aspects about the sunfish is just how fast it grows. A single sunfish can gain hundreds of pounds in a single year, even though they are absolutely tiny when they are born. A newborn sunfish is less than a gram, meaning an adult sunfish is 60 million times larger than a baby. It's one of the most impressive growth transformations in animal history. And even more amazing is that the ocean sunfish releases up to 300 million eggs at a time, more than any other vertebrate in the animal kingdom. Number 1, the giant Ghana snail. The giant Ghana snail is huge. Any animal with giant in its name is likely going to be big, and the Ghana snail is no exception. These slimy snails are the biggest in the world. They are native to West Africa. Some people call them giant tiger land snails, and they can grow to be an entire foot. To try and understand this a bit better, look at your hand. From the bottom of your palm to the tip of your middle finger is probably less than a foot. This means the giant Ghana snail is so big that it couldn't fit in the palm of your hand. And get ready for some cool facts, because the Ghana snail is full of them. A single snail is able to lay between 30 and 300 eggs at a time. Also, a single snail can breed by itself, because these snails are hermaphrodites, meaning a single snail can turn into hundreds, then thousands, then even millions. These giant snails would quickly take over the world if they didn't have predators out there making them into fast snacks. What's the biggest animal you've ever come across? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe to get updates on all our most popular videos.